like to bring the regular council meeting for the town of Grand Bay-Westfield on Monday, December the 8th, 2025 to order at 7:01 p.m. We respectfully acknowledge that Grand Bay-Westfield exists on the traditional Woolastookwa land. The lands of Wabanaki people are recognized in a series of peace and friendship treaties to establish an ongoing relationship of peace, friendship, and mutual respect between equal nations. The river that runs by our town is known as Woolastook, along which live Woolastookwa, the people of the beautiful and bountiful river. We, the staff and elected representatives, pay respect to the elders, past and present, and descendants of this land. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see you all here. We have some guests in the audience, and I would like to recognize to the guests that we have our youth council here with us tonight. So this is the future of municipal governance going forward. So I'll move on to item 4, record of attendance. We have a full roster of councillors here tonight, so thank you for that. Item 5 is agenda approval. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the agenda for the meeting of December the 8th, 2025. And do I have a mover? Councillor Billman, seconded by Councillor Murphy. Any discussion on the item?
Just an item, Your Worship, item 10C.
Yes.
I thought at the last council meeting, after the presentation by the ATV club, it was recommended by one of our councillors that we defer that decision to bring that to a first reading until we've had a presentation by the RCMP and Public Safety on ATVs.
Okay. Are you moving that be removed and tabled until that presentation is made, Councillor?
Well, if there is a chance that there's a first reading that passes this evening, then we will have not done what we were suggested that the order take place.
But procedurally, do we need, so we have a mover and a seconder, and we have an amendment to the, potential amendment to the motion. Procedurally, what is the best course of action?
One, just table it, and then put the date, that we try to arrange to have them here. The sergeant is coming the first meeting in January. To the point regarding first reading. First reading can be done pending that because it's the third reading that we're primarily concerned about. And I do believe that the recreation director has come up with a very reasonable potential solution that we could take to the RCMP and public safety as part of their presentation on what may work or not work instead of just having a blank slate. So that was part of the rationale. We can't get the RCMP here tonight. We can do first reading, get the process going. Council has a potential solution as to how to move forward. That was the intention of just doing the first reading tonight.
I'm okay, I'll withdraw the amendment, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. That being said, Councillor, there is second reading on this agenda, so that needs to be removed.
It's just first reading, isn't it?
Not according to my agenda. I've got first and second reading on mine. 10C.
I have first reading.
Okay, so I have special agenda.
Yours is special, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, so that's good. So no amendments are needed. Thank you for bringing that up, Councillor. I appreciate that. Any further discussion on the item? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? That motion is carried. Thank you. Item 6, disclosure of conflict of interest. Are there any? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 7, which is public hearings, presentations, delegations, and petitions. And 7A, we have the active transportation report. And we have Track Consulting here with us tonight to present that report. Welcome. We are happy to have you here. And I will turn the floor over to you.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Sadiqa Bursi. I'm a planner with Track Consulting, and I'm joined by my colleague Roger Boychuk, who is the team's transportation engineer who supported this work. So I've just got a quick set of slides here to quickly run you through the highlight reel of our plan, and then we can save some time for some questions. So, our process really is begins with understanding the community that we're working in. And so maybe Roger, do you want to share with the crowd there kind of what your team did and what you kind of found when you were on the ground?
Yeah, quite quickly to get through, we spent 2.5 days in the field in Grand Bay-Westfield, walking the trails, e-biking all over town as quick as we could, videos, GoPros on our forehead and all trails, to make sure that we truly understood what was happening there, the culture of the area, and how people were using the network. And at the end of the day, we found there was a lot of really fantastic things that were happening in the community, lots of great infrastructure that was put in place, and some very noticeable gaps in certain portions of it that helped us identify some key priorities within the network from both a recreational perspective, but also from a commuting perspective, and using alternate modes of transportation as a key alternative to motor vehicle traffic in the area. So I think we spent a fair amount of time there, and hopefully that is reflected in the plan that we end up submitting.
Perfect. Thanks, Roger. So while Roger and his crew were out on the ground, we back in St. John's, we were engaging with the community virtually through survey and through stakeholder outreach. And we heard a lot of really great feedback from the community. It's clear that Grand Bay-Westfield is a town that really loves to walk and likes to be connected to each other with walking. And so we really wanted this plan to highlight that and to really strengthen the connections, particularly east to west. There's a great sidewalk network north-south within the kind of core community area. And so our plan, we kind of focus on how to move people from east to west, particularly within school zones, and like I said, those kind of core commercial areas. And so that was kind of part of our challenges that we identified is, how do we give the community what they're looking for, which is additional infrastructure to move. And then that helped us develop kind of these 12 plan objectives, which you see in your plan. And then that turned into actions and eventually recommendations. So I should say there's kind of 5 high objectives, but then underneath these 5, there's other objectives that speak to these 5 themes. And these really came from the site visit and our engagement, which is enhancing safety and comfort for people that are moving throughout the community, embedding accessibility and equity, making sure that residents across the town have access to a safe and comfortable active transportation system. And also thinking about how we can encourage short trips. We heard a lot from folks that they want to be able to get to either getting their kids to school faster and safer, or not necessarily faster, but safer and not using a vehicle. And so what are the opportunities there to take those people out of cars and onto the sidewalk? That's just an example, but there's many others. And of course, making sure that the actions that we suggest can be funded, at least in part, through federal and provincial funding opportunities. And as I mentioned before, really strengthening the overall connectivity within Grand Bay-Westfield. So this is a really quick highlight about the plan. But like I said, the goal here for us is to provide a practical approach for improving walking, cycling, wheeling to key destinations throughout the community. Like I said, really a lot of people are moving within what we call community hubs, so areas around with the densest amenities like schools and shopping and commercial opportunities. So those were kind of our key areas of focus. Community feedback, like I said, highlighted the need for crossing improvements, highlighted that there's many areas with missing sidewalks, that limited east-west mobility with those safe sidewalks, and lack of protected spaces for people that are biking. And so all of this kind of culminated into a phased set of improvements that focus on school routes, so areas that children have to walk to school. They're outside of that 1.5 kilometer radius where they're not able to take the bus. We also focus, like I said, on those community hubs and commercial areas for more safe and comfortable infrastructure. And this is just a really high level list of some of the recommendations that are in the plan. So upgrades to Route 177, particularly in the southern part of the town, to actually add a separated bike lane to make sure that drivers and cyclists feel like they have their own space on the road. That sidewalk expansion piece through a couple of different phases, mainly in kind of those core school areas. Updated and new crossing opportunities, strengthening what exists and then adding some things where it's needed. Introducing a road user education program, which would see targeting youth and young kind of mobility users within the community to make sure that everyone understands the rules of the road. It'd be great to see that in partnership with the RCMP, as I know that they have a great relationship with the local schools. Updating the winter sidewalk maintenance plan to focus, like I said, on those school areas and kind of key commercial hubs. And then thinking about a crossing opportunity to Ward 2, as there currently is no safe pedestrian crossing to that important part of the town. And that's it for me. So I'll turn it back over to council if there's questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. I really enjoyed the reading the plan, but I will reserve my questions till later, and I'll open the floor to council for any questions that they may have. Councillor Belvis?
For Roger, he was out biking around our town. How did he find the biking in our town? Was there any problems, or did he notice any hard, like people running him over or anything? Any challenges? What did you find?
I officially did not get run over, so I'm happy to say that. No, actually quite enjoyable with glitches in the system, if you could say. I was up down Inglewood, and we did some biking down 177. We actually hit along the power lines and a lot of the ATV, and I think one of the interesting things we found, there's some great spots in that look to be mostly ATV trails that are wonderful biking spots as well through the woods. So, we had looked at a few, potential opportunities, and I know that probably goes back and forth between the AT plan and the recreational plan, but, the facilities that are available for biking are absolutely phenomenal. The quality of those specifically for biking, particularly if you're maybe more of a recreational or an early rider as opposed to experienced rider, can be a little more challenging to achieve. But as an experienced biker, I generally found it was a wonderful spot to bike. And regularly we'd run into little gaps, like if I was going from the east side to the west side, and that highlighted some of our challenges. I'd try and get across the roadway. There wasn't necessarily a crosswalk, or I'd have a receiving roadway that was relatively narrow, and cars would be going by. But I would say in our time there, I didn't experience anybody honking or screaming out the window or giving me various hand gestures or anything like that. We didn't run into that, but of course limited experience, I would say. So
yeah, we have that 3 meter rule, right? In the province, 3 meter rule. So you're protected by the law, right? Also, right? So people see a bike, they'll stay 10 feet away from you, regardless of or fall back, right?
Sometimes.
you probably get a line.
Yeah.
Somebody follow a bike until you find a good passing spot, because sometimes you can't go around a bike, so they have the right of way sometimes. So, and another thing is about the walking to schools. Can we partner with the schools maybe to help finance these trails to schools within 1.5 kilometers, or can the school board help us in any way or something to help pay for trails, or to help cut down on walking from the bike trails to walking?
Yeah, I think that's, and you sort of highlighted, there was a few key things we look at. We really tried to figure out how are we going to prioritize some of the recommendations that come out of the plan, and the commercial hubs are great. Those are standard ones, but the schools really stood out as a real priority from a safety and operational perspective. And that stemmed from some of the original comments that came with respect to some of the scooters and the use of sort of the e-scooters and e-bikes and kids zipping back and forth. As you can imagine, when you add 10 or 15 kilometers to a 12-year-old's pace, it can just get you into a bit more trouble a bit quicker. And we did observe that a fair amount, where kids would dart across the road, or they'd be going down the side of the road, and then they do a little weave in and out. So that stemmed, then you gets talked about some of the educational programs, and there was that real, I think, requirement from an operational perspective to make sure that everybody is as educated as they can, both driver and students in the road right of way, to minimize those risks. But that also did highlight some of those real key corridors, particularly in the east-west direction, where, Inglewood, the kids would congregate, come to a roadway that crosses 177 and didn't necessarily have the infrastructure in place to do that. So absolutely, I think if you think about starting from the school where you get your most of your people, most of your students getting to, if you start prioritizing from the school outward along those spokes, there's some real high value stuff there from a safety perspective that I think, certainly the town, the province, and the schools I would assume would be very interested in pursuing at a fairly aggressive level.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also just want to add as well, when we spoke to a number of the school principals. They're very, very on board with making their school areas safer. And so I don't want to speak for them, but it really seemed like there was a lot of enthusiasm to partner with some of this stuff.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just wondering if, going back to the rural areas in Ward 2 for a minute, if there's any conversations with DTI on partnering up with them on the narrow parts of the road, if they have any ideas, or if there's been any conversation with them around any of that.
Yeah, we actually did speak with them, and it sounded like it was kind of an open conversation they're willing to have, an opportunity for the town to kind of submit and work with them. I know that they every year or every couple of years they publish their maintenance, their kind of estimated maintenance plan for all the provincial roads. And so they suggested there could be an opportunity where if they had work they were doing in Ward 2 and they had planned, the town could partner with them to kind of cost share. Roger, is there anything else you remember from that you want to chime in?
No, I think that was good. And that was specifically to the roadway. I think when we look into rural areas, we're always looking for opportunities for off-road trails. Is there a corridor? Is there some place that we can put a trail that's parallel to off the main roadway where we create that separation and maybe more of a natural environment? And often in rural areas, you often have the space to do that. Whether you have the ability to do it is a different question. I can certainly see that's probably a good overlap piece where, an off-road trail in some locations would really tie the trails master plan and the active transportation plan together in common facilities. If that's possible, that's a fantastic solution. It saves on the paint side of it. You have to take down maybe a few trees in a corridor that you find. Where that's not possible, then we mentioned before that shoulder space becomes really invaluable to try and maximize what you can do in those areas. Particularly in some cases where you have a lot of houses lining the highways, that becomes more and more important. So, yeah.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Toole.
I just wanted to more of a comment than a question that I really like the focus on the education side, not so much education on safety, but education as to where people should go and where they can go, and then connecting to that to the visibility. You put in whether it's paint, whether it's demarcation, just so people know you're supposed to be there and you can be there. I do cycle in town quite a bit, and I actually get people stop me regularly, at least once per season, going, how do you find it? And I didn't know you could get through here, and can you bike? So people don't know that they can be there. So I think just having that, if you build it, they will come sort of thing. If they know about it, people will use it more often. So I do like that aspect, and they're low cost alternatives too, where it's kind of a win-win for everybody. But yeah, I think a lot of the problems, and I believe it's kind of here and in the trails plan as well, as the connection piece. Like we have great infrastructure in one part, and then you have to go either on a really bad part of the road or get off a trail or something to pop back on. And so part of that is knowing where you can go, or even marking those connections and things like that. But no, this is a great overview. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? I'll hop in. Everybody's had their say. So I really like the plan, as I said, as the outset. I mean, there's clear actionable goals, a series of, specific actions with different phases, short, medium, long term, clear connection with plans that we have that are currently existing, like our municipal plan, our Parks and Rec master plan. I really liked it was very practical and right down to a list of potential funding opportunities. So I really liked that. My question is, the short term 0 to 2 years, we're looking for basically delivering visible results quickly. So there's a focus on schools and community hubs, and I agree with that. But my question is this: so we have a sort of a densified part of the town. We also have a more rural part of the town, and we have limited dollars. And I understand that if everything's a priority, nothing is. But have you worked with communities where they've been able to balance that early sort of densified area hub type infrastructure, but also started projects or did some work serving the more rural, far-flung parts of the community?
Great question. I mean, it's most of the work I've done is in Newfoundland and Labrador, and most of the communities I work in are just rural. Like, there's no dense part. I don't know, Roger, do you have anything that comes to your mind?
Yeah, it's a couple of things that I think become priorities is, recognizing, and very much to your question, recognizing that anything that you implement infrastructure-wise in a rural area is usually long and it's simply more expensive because you got length and you just don't have the density of people to use that. Now, I think it's important to evaluate the community a little bit. I think some of that came out in the public consultations between both projects, but it may need to get teased out a bit more. Often in rural areas, we'll find people have very low expectations. They've moved to a rural area, they've been in a rural area for a reason, and they don't necessarily expect a sidewalk or a bike lane. Therefore, the priority is not necessarily there to spend dollars on that. There's a certain expectation that it goes to the areas where you have higher usage. I'm not saying that's the right or the only decision to make, but often you'll see that they're like, oh yeah, well, why wouldn't you just put it in the cores where everybody walks and everybody bikes and we're not that worried about it, So that's where in rural areas we tend to start with those very low costs. If we can narrow up the lanes a little bit, paint a line a little bit to give them an extra meter on the shoulders on the side of the road, that often goes a long way to the community to say, hey, we're doing something, recognizing that, we've got 2 or 3 kilometers of roadway that gets very expensive to build a sidewalk adjacent to. But we're taking some low costs, dealing with some low hanging fruit, or if you can do a nice nature trail adjacent to the roadway, you get really good bang for your buck out of off-road trails parallel to major corridors. So I think that's the starting spot with this stuff is you identify, can we do some things fairly low cost in larger areas where we do address some of the rural areas, and then we focus maybe some more of the, a bit more of the spending in the areas where you do have density of, residential, commercial, business densities that you just get the more users. I think those go a long way to sort of balancing that out. Recognize that you're probably, at the end of the day, you're probably going to spend more money in the higher density urban areas.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bellman.
We have a corridor already with existing trails, so systems already. Have you identified any other trail systems to connect our town outside of the existing trail already? Have you found any other spots to connect the main source of the town?
Yeah, so our work primarily focused on the road network. And I think that's probably maybe a question for Megan, because I know that's kind of the focus of her work was trails. No, that's probably a bit of a cop-out answer, but I know Roger did kind of look at some of the trail network and looked at some connections, but we didn't really focus on trails as part of the scope of our work.
Thank you. Yeah, and we have Megan on next, so. she'll be able to help you with that, Councillor. Do we have any other questions for the group while we have them? All right, seeing none, thank you very, very much. We really appreciate the work that you've done on behalf of the town, and look forward to working with the plan going forward. So the motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file this information and defer to the 2027 budget process. Do I have a mover? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence, thank you. Councillor Balcom, second. Any further discussion on the item? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? That motion is carried, thank you. And we'll move on to item 7B, and be the trail report, and we have Megan from RC Strategies on the line. Thanks for joining us, Megan.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council, for time this evening and presenting our work supporting the Trails Master Plan. On the first slide, I wanted to begin my presentation tonight by just providing some purpose to this planning work and articulating the context that to set the recommendations that I'll touch on in this presentation. So the focus of the Trails Master Plan is really around recreation trails and recreation use of trails. It does, however, also support active transportation. And to Roger's point, where we can leverage the two to ensure that we are making the most of our resources and ensuring that our residents have access to a trail network to support their diverse needs. A key piece that we've considered in this planning work is around balancing that access as well as conservation and protecting ecologically sensitive areas, considering broader economic and cultural benefits associated with trails and the use of trails, and how that might be leveraged to support broader needs of the community. And we'll focus our planning and positioning what we perceive to be the town's future leadership around trails to ensure that we're aligning with national standards that exist. So some key pieces are key findings looking at the overall trail network. So our team was tasked with looking broadly at both the formal and informal pathways. So beyond the Municipal Heritage Trail or the Blueberry Hill Natural Reserve or even the Turtle Mountain Trail, looking at the pathways that exist. And so we used a variety of different data sources by looking through Hiking NB, all trails, to help inform and understand that overall conception of the trail network. Certainly, as was highlighted within the previous presentation, is that certainly connectivity gaps exist. From a recreation and a user point of view, there's also accessibility challenges. So from a condition point of view, trail condition is inconsistent. There's definitely some gaps around winter maintenance for that all year round use of trails. And then accessibility standards, so how individuals with a disability are going to be able to access and enjoy our use of trails. And so all of that is really a cornerstone and a key input to the development of the recommendations that we've provided within the Trails Master Plan. A second key component was the community engagement that was conducted. And I think the one key piece, the strongest point that came through in our community engagement is just how valued trails are to your residents. Your residents certainly believe that trails are key to their quality of life, and primarily using that for walking, doing so for nature appreciation, but really for health and wellness. When we talk about some barriers that we heard or areas for enhancement or improvement, some of those have already been articulated. So around that wayfinding, just that general lack of awareness as to what trails or what pathways are able for our residents to use, particularly those informal trails. Residents are unsure where they can or should be going. The other key piece around future support is around those support amenities. So improving not only the signages I just spoke to, but also benches, so people have places to rest when they're out on the trails, and shelter, providing from heat, from sun, but also from rain or other inclement weather. So our strategy really focuses on providing that pathway forward, identifying key strategies and recommendations for trail planning in Grand Bay-Westfield. We do articulate key strategic foundations through the development of a vision statement, as well as key guiding principles. We really think that these two pieces are strategic foundations that are helping to summarize the focus of your investment into trails, as well as the desired outcomes from our trails within the community. These represent key fundamental principles and values that we hold and that we want to ensure are kept top of mind and become almost a guiding point for when we get into making decisions with our recommendations. So we do identify 7 key strategic themes within the document, and supporting those 7 key themes are 39 supporting implementation recommendations. Now, of course, as a guiding strategic document, this document is intended to be implemented over the course of 10 plus years. There are going to be some key pieces that we're going to want to look at as a priority in a short term, and those are our fundamental actions that we want to ensure we're addressing to support connectivity, to support functionality and safety within our network. And from there, we're going to look into future years where within the recommendations provided, that we want to enhance our trail network and support our long-term vision for what trails can be and mean to our residents and visitors of Grand Bay-Westfield. I'd say the recommendations really do focus on being mindful and responsible of our civic resources, that we want to be able to leverage our partnerships and relationships, as well as building on our existing trails to ensure that we're celebrating those trails that we have, celebrating our community, and supporting that diversity of experience and activities, as well as fostering sustainability and stewardship of our spaces and trails throughout the community. In terms of next steps, obviously, there is asking will be for the endorsement of the master plan. There will be an implementation plan that's developed that's going to focus on the importance of resource allocation, leveraging of funding, potential new sources, as well as partnerships. A key piece within the master plan is a recommendation around a trail advisory committee. So leveraging that passion that exists in the community that we heard through this planning process, but also through the Parks and Recreation Master Plan development. And we want to foster that and leverage that to support our trail network. We want to continue to build on communication strategies that are going to raise awareness and encourage community participation from both an active transportation and a recreation perspective. And overall, just focusing on meeting that overall vision, that long-term goal for the trail network in Grand Bay-Westfield, which is a connected and inclusive, sustainable network that's going to enrich the lives of our residents, and it's going to foster and encourage visitor activity as well. So I do appreciate your time this evening and would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you for that presentation, Megan. I'll now open the floor to questions from council. Councillor Dobbins?
So how do you rate our trail system so far in Grand Bay-Westfield, existing trail system?
I think that you have a very good trail system. I think that there's a very good diversity of trails within the community. Certainly there's the challenges that arise and exist with having some of those informal trails, but we see that in all of the communities that we work in. The trail community, the mountain bike community, they're passionate folks, and they do take it upon themselves to get out there and get their hands dirty. And we want to foster that passion, but we want to provide good, sound direction that's going to help your municipal team manage that. And that's, you'll see within the document there, providing some direction around maintenance standards and maintenance plans. We think it's important as well looking to help building that awareness as well. And so that's a key piece that we've looked at. But I will say overall, I think that if we look as how we've mapped out the trails and trying to piece together all of the different information, because that is a piece of it, right? Like looking to see what is existing. Overall, you have a very good trail network. And when we benchmarked Grand Bay-Westfield against other communities, you did have a good provision rate.
How's accessibility?
The accessibility is an area of challenge and certainly needs to be improved, and you'll see key recommendations for that. We do recommend a phased approach there, looking to see where we can leverage potentially some fundings, but the accessibility is a concern that will need to be looked at in the future. But I'd also say that is, again, a very common concern that we see in municipalities throughout the Maritimes and throughout Canada, that it's a piece that communities are working on doing better at, right? We only can do better with when we have new information. Trans-Canada Trails has done a lot of work around their broad guidelines around the all-person trails, and we're starting to see that being implemented. And I think that while that's a gap that's identified, you are well positioned and you have a lot of friends in other municipalities that are dealing with that same challenge.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Well, that's great. We really appreciate the presentation, Megan, and the report and the work that you've done on this. And I'm sure we'll be in touch as we work down the road here with the plan and how what an implementation is going to eventually look like. So the motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file this information and defer to the 2027 budget process. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Toole, thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Murphy, any further discussion on the item? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will now move on to item 7C, and we have a Dr. Petra House and VP and academic VP academic Heather Campbell, the IHE. I'm not sure if I've got your title here correctly. So if I'm incorrect, make sure to correct me when I'm up there. So we have Heather Campbell, the IHI director as well, and welcome.
Thank you. So we were just talking earlier, so thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me today. It was a couple of years ago when I was here the first time with a different title, because at that time I was Vice President St. John, overseeing the St. John campus of UMB. UMB went through a major restructuring over the last couple of years, and since 2 years now I'm the Provost and Vice President Academic, overseeing all academic matters across UMB on both campuses, so Fredericton and St. John, and also like everything related to student support. So student services is also part of that portfolio, and a new entity which we call Learning Futures, which is focusing on online learning for students, but also on professional development for people in the workforce who want to take micro-credentials. So we're growing this as well. And so I'm happy to be here today to talk a little bit about the updates of the Integrated Health Initiative. It has been a while, and here we go. So what I wanted to tell you today is that IHI, how we call it, is not just a UMB project. It became, over the last years, a St. John region. It's a project, and the mayor and the mayors of the St. John region actually all at the time supported a letter that went to the St. Premier to help us with the funding for a new Health and Social Innovation Center, a building that is built right now on the St. John campus. So we are saying it's a St. John region success story, and it's not only a priority for UMB, but it is built with community partnerships, and it's designed to strengthen this region's future. We have established the foundation for the new health ecosystem, something that will go on and respond to the emerging needs of the New Brunswick communities. We bring together education, research, innovation, and community collaboration to address some of the most pressing health and societal issues and challenges of our time. And what began, how we like to say today, as a bold vision is now a powerful engine for change. And we are already transforming health education, research, and innovation in our province. So I'm thrilled to say we have moved from aspiration to action. And new collaborations have taken place, and the IHI is now a growing network of people and programs located in the heart of emerging health innovation corridor, with UMB on the St. John campus, with MBCC, New Brunswick Community College, Allied Health being on the same campus, Dalhousie Medicine New Brunswick, our medical school, and of course the St. John Regional Hospital. A truly unique opportunity that we have and we leveraged. We are educating the next generation of health reformers. So we started with a Bachelor of Health, which is unique in Eastern Canada a couple of years ago. In the middle of COVID, our first cohort started in September of 2020 in person. We're one of the few universities who actually opened campus again for in-person education. We have now more than 200 students enrolled, and we have the second cohort that graduated this May, who are successful in the workforce, in the healthcare systems already, and some of them, of course, went on to grad school, and we have now also students in medical school. Two of them are actually stayed in St. John with Dalhousie Medicine New Brunswick. We have them in practicums, so they go out in the communities and help with supporting the communities. We are at the moment, with support of a funder, developing a co-op program, so that the students are actually getting scheduled exposure to not-for-profit organizations as well, and not only to the typical hospitals. So the donor gave us money to help the not-for-profit organizations to actually pay for the co-op students so that they can go where they're needed most and that they get exposed to the social determinants of health as well. We are ready to shape the future of healthcare by educating our students and by working in partnerships. So Canadian College of Health Leaders, for example, the students who go through the program have prerequisites so that they can actually apply for this afterwards, get almost like it's like the CPA in accounting. This is basically for health managers and will become more and more a standard. Horizon Health Network is already a partner as well, and they are looking for these credentials now in their leaders. And then we have, since May this year, what started as a program is now a school. So we have a School of Integrated Health with its own dean overseeing the program growth, and we're in the process of adding a master's in public health, as well as a need that was identified by our partners in the region. Checking. We have a growing team of people. So the dean, Dr. Lisa Best, is here in St. John since many, many years. We also have a professor, Maggie Brown, a health analytics, and Tony Ryman from the Canadian Cancer Society, as well as Jennifer Woodland in psychology. And we are currently in the hiring process of another professor, but also in the hiring process of a research chair in aging transitions who will focus on our elderly population, basically staying home longer, but then also helping them with transitioning into healthcare facilities or in hospitals, out of hospitals, and also supporting families throughout that process. So we hope to have this position in place next year. And the Health Innovation Center, so the Health and Social Innovation Center, kind of, you probably know that story. We started before COVID with a plan of 38 million. The building will cost 68 until we're done. So we are still in fundraising mode for that, but the building is under construction. You probably can see it from the waterfront here in Grand Bay, how it grows, and it will oversee the campus. The 3.5-story building is ready to completion in summer next year. So we are having the next cohort of students who come in September will be able to use this new building alongside with all the students who are already there. We work on research as well. So we have some research chairs, child and youth mental health, aging transition, child rights, we talked already about. And we have an entire level in the new building where all those researchers will collaborate and we create this innovation space together with an accelerator as well for health innovation. And they will work together in that panel Center for Integrated Health Research, which is that home for those researchers. We also have Promise Partnership that you might have heard of. It's a program that's run in St. John since 15 years now, supporting children who are growing up in St. John, mainly Crescent Valley in poverty, and giving them access to numeracy and literacy. And we added digital literacy now to the program. And with the generous support of the Joyce Foundation, we are adding that curriculum component, but we also now expanding this program through New Brunswick. We have just started Moncton and rural Moncton area, and we're looking, there's a whole needs assessment for the province, where there are the children growing up in these lower income areas, and how we can support them to be ready in school and making it to high school, and being prepared for what's ahead of them. And I'm saying this, you're probably not very interested in what's happening in Moncton, but here is something we did in St. John. We started here, we did it for many years very successfully, and now we're basically sending it out to the rest, exploring, expanding it, and that's something that we want to do more of. Talk a little bit about the building, 65,000 square foot, purpose-built, LEED certified, fully accessible, connected, which is something unique for our campus. As you know, connected through tunnel system and pathway systems, so students actually do not have, the only spot where they have to really get out of a building in the winter is when they want to go to the library. And it's only like a little spot. It's like from here to this wall, and that works. And 2 winters now, the students had to, this was interrupted because of construction, so they're all looking forward to this. We're adding also a healing garden that is honoring our Indigenous history and reconciliation, which will have an outdoor gathering space for having those connections with our Indigenous communities, but also for our non-Indigenous students to learn more about our Indigenous history here in the area. And of course, with all this, we have local and regional companies involved in the construction and creating job and expertise and long-term growth in St. John. An important part for me is always that the building is not only for health students, the building is a community hub. So you could have your council retreat on the top floor of that building and can rent that space as well for events. And so we wanted to make sure that we open up the infrastructure we have on the St. John campus to all of our communities, and not only to our students, but of course our students will have classrooms there as well. It's part of us to basically celebrate creativity and culture. There will also be an art display for Indigenous art as well that will rotate through. Here's a little rendering from, this is when you come from the quad into the building, and they say like it's a combination of a timber frame construction and precast and steel. And it has another floor down where we basically connect to the tunnel system. And we're just summarizing what else is coming, because it's always like, we have done one thing, we're not stopping to do more. We have started, since I was here last time, a couple of new programs that some are under the Integrated Health Initiatives, others are not, but I wanted to mention it here so that you can spread the word. You can now get a Bachelor of Social Work here in St. John, on the St. John campus. It's in partnership with NBCC, if the students are starting there first, or they can have a direct entry. We are doing an online Bachelor of Applied Management. So it's the first program where you actually can get a degree built on a diploma from any accredited college in Canada, and you do not have to come on campus, and it's 3 terms a year, part-time, so that students are having that are already in the workforce has a chance to upgrade to an applied management degree. We have started our first 4-year full engineering program in St. John, environmental engineering, and we have the first cohort started last year, and we're slowly growing. This have hired 3 new environmental engineering professors and working on this. And then on the health side, we're working in St. John on pharmacy and optometry, adding those programs to the St. John campus, hopefully in 2028. but this is a long way, so I'll probably come back for some support letters, because we're meeting with government right now to get the support from government of New Brunswick, and then go through the whole process for getting ready for offering those programs, which are desperately needed in New Brunswick. So that's another part of us contributing to the healthcare sector. Physiotherapy is also in the making, but this is going to be offered out of Fredericton, because there we have already a faculty of kinesiology and a top-notch building, so it makes sense to have that extra upgrade in an area where we have the infrastructure already in place. And with that, I hope I gave you a little glimpse of where we are, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Dr. Huff. That was a great presentation. I can't believe how far it's come since the first time you came to present to this council. It's really incredible. I mean, as a very proud grad of UMBSJ, it's just, I'm very proud to see the work that's being done. The UMBSJ is critical, you know, to the growth and vitality of our region. So thank you for all the work that you're doing there. I'll open the floor to see if there are any questions from council on the presentation of the work that you're doing generally with the academic programs.
Just a comment, Your Worship. Exciting.
Thank you.
Very exciting. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Councillor McIntosh Morris and Councillor Burpee.
Thank you. I always appreciate your presentations and look forward to hearing about your progress. My comments and questions are sort of personal in nature and sort of not, as this topic have probably affected most New Brunswickers. So for my day job, I'm a radiation therapist at the regional, and I'm not sure if you're aware of the critical shortage of therapists, but currently we're working at half staff while continuing to treat a full complement of patients. So nationally, we graduate 100 students. One hospital in Ontario employs 120 therapists.
Yeah.
So my question is, and when any of you have heard or have been privy to any talks of a Maritime or Atlantic Canada School of Radiation Therapy in this area, in my opinion, St. John would be an ideal location with the university, the hospital, the med school, and the community college, all in one area.
That's actually a very timely question. Radiation therapy was a program that was offered in St. John many, many years ago, and it actually got basically phased out because of the collaboration that was needed with Horizon Health, and at that time it wasn't identified as something they were going on. It's back on the table. We actually had today meetings with Minister Demers to talk about the needs in the healthcare sector, and radiation therapy is on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burpee.
Thank you for your presentation. I just have a comment actually, that this is perfect timing because we have members of the youth council here who may be interested in attending UNB at some point. So thank you for the information, and the new programs are exciting that's coming up. So you never know, one of them might be interested in that.
Yeah, and I always like to come by to talk about what's coming up, because we're planning our education years ahead. And so I'm happy to see that Youth Council is here today. And of course, as for everyone here, this is a first opportunity for questions. You can always reach out to me or to Heather Campbell, the director of the Integrated Health Initiative, for follow-up, including we do tours through the construction building. If council would be interested to come by, we have to set it up. It's typically Friday afternoon, and you will have to have your security, safety boots and everything on. But we can arrange this as well to show where we are and how we're making progress on campus.
Councillor Day.
I sort of am envious after almost 30, almost 40 years in working in healthcare, in food service, that I'm now retired, although I don't like that word, but the opportunities you have here, what a difference to 73 when I started university. And I think it's incredible that it's here in St. John. And I'd like to thank you and your team because yes, you came with ideas, and to see those ideas take off, and to see something like a baccalaureate in social work, and then to expand it out is huge for this area and what we can have for our young people. And we need these people in healthcare. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Worship. Dr. Hoff, really appreciate the presentation and the excitement you bring to pretty much everything I see you engage with. I'm just wondering, what's the biggest barrier as you're scaling now? It seems to me that I'm looking at, there's a lot of universities that struggle because they're not able to scale up, they're not able to recruit the new students. You seem to be doing something. Arizona State University is a wonderful example of a transformational university from what it was 25 years ago to today. So what's the biggest barriers that you're encountering to scaling up, to doing what you want to do, and what role may municipalities play in supporting them?
Yeah. So I think the biggest hurdle, as always, is funding. And we got the first hurdle for the building, there will be a gap, we know that. But it's also like the advocacy, when you ask about what council can help, is to talk about the St. John campus being a hub for the health sector, being agile. We are tailoring programming that we develop towards the needs of the region, and by this attracting our own students to stay here, to build their careers in their hometowns, in their home communities, but also attracting students from outside to come here and stay here, because that's the experience we have if someone comes to our area for 4 years for an undergrad program and we have the job opportunities for them here, they will stay here. The quality of life we can offer here is unique and quite impressive, and you came from somewhere else, I came from somewhere else, and so I think this is really important, is the advocacy and the support for what we're doing there and the value that it brings to your communities. I think is going to be really important. You all have day jobs, but you also have your roles here where you might be able to support us when we're coming for example, the pharmacy one. I will probably come back and ask for a support letter as well once we are closer by, to say, like, this is another program that we can build here. Very interestingly, when we started social work, we were consulting, of course, and someone was telling us that good luck with the program, it will be difficult to hire professors who want to teach in the program. And we have an amazing group of social workers who have been, the director of our social work program has been working as a social worker in St. John for 20 years and is now in the classroom building up that program. And we're looking at it from a different perspective. There's a huge indigenous component there as well. So we're building on the local strengths, and we had no problems recruiting professors. It's more for me as a provost overseeing the budget to find the money for actually pay for them, but that's like the advocacy is really important for us.
Dr. Hoff, I have a question. With the wholesale changes at the federal level with respect to immigration and the lack of a targeted immigration strategy for the Atlantic provinces, and of course the new federal levels plan just came out that probably isn't adequate for the needs of New Brunswick and the rest of Atlantic Canada. How is that, is that going to affect the programming here in terms of students at UMBSJ? Is that a risk that you see? And if so, how are you pivoting to manage that?
Yeah, so the implication that we had through the changes in the immigration regulations, although for students and the student visa situation, how long they have to wait for a visa to come, has hit pretty every post-secondary education in the country, and UMB is it's the same here. In the health program we saw the first year, because we had a very high uptake from students actually from Nigeria, mainly because we have a strong community already from students who have gone through our MBA program, who settled here, who have families here, who were basically recruiting without us ever having to go there. And that really hit us 1 year, the first year, so we're going slowly back. The main areas, the St. John campus has not had in the most recent years a high number of international students. We were just getting there. So where we see it is in engineering and in computer science. This is where it has the biggest impact, and in the MBA program, drastically. So we're hoping with the changes that were now announced for graduate students, research-based and course-based, that those students are now exempt and can come again, and that they are promising us to process those visa applications faster, that we are basically can rebound soon. But it's impacting us, as it is in the workforce, it's also with the students.
Thank you for that. And any other questions for Dr. Huffwood while we have her here? entertain Trevor Holder, who I didn't acknowledge, and of course Heather Campbell. Thank you for being here. Any questions or comments, or?
Your worship,
Yes,
I'm
please.
wondering, our youth council, do they have any questions? Because they've got,
Well, procedurally, they're
They're
not allowed.
exempt?
Yeah, they're
Alright.
exempt from, but if they wanna send me some questions or send Dr. House questions afterwards, happy to facilitate that.
Yes. We're happy to.
Thank you very, very much for being here, everybody, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. Really
Thank you again for
appreciate
having us.
it. Okay, so the motion there is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the information as presented. Do I have a motion, Councillor Bellman? Thank you. Do I have a second, Councillor Balcom? Any further discussion on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Safe drive home. Item 8, minutes of previous meeting. 8A, regular meeting of council, November 24th, 2025. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of November 24th, 2025 as presented. I have a mover, Deputy Mayor Toole, thanks, and a second, Councillor Murphy. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? That motion is carried, thanks. Item 9, unfinished business, there being none, we'll move on to item 10, bylaws. 10A, GG-002, Council Code of Conduct, third reading. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the third reading and enactment of the council code of conduct bylaw. I'll get a mover and a seconder and ask the CAO to speak to the item. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Toole, thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. And John?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, Council, this is now the third time this is before Council, and just some basic, sorry, really just basic changes, which includes a change in non-compliance to corrective actions, and that all drainage, sorry, anyways, just modest changes of that. Sorry, I'm done.
Are there any questions from council? No. There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thanks. 10B, P-009. I didn't actually read it by title, did I? Nicole, did I read that by title? I don't think I did. Okay, so I'm gonna back up. So I'll do the motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the third reading and enactment of the council code of conduct bylaw, third reading by title, GG-002, council code of conduct bylaw. And do this mover and seconder, are you fine with that? Additional, and all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. So sorry for that hiccup. I was like, wait a minute, I didn't actually do the third reading. 10B, PD-009, zoning bylaw, third reading by title. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the third reading and enactment of the zoning bylaw amendment, third reading by title. Bylaw number PD-009-2-B zoning bylaw amendment. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Do I have a second? Deputy Mayor Toole, thank you. And John, I'll get you to speak to the item.
Before I turn it over to our building inspector and development officer, basically, we're just trying to make ourselves business-friendly community, but also manage growth appropriately to meet our growth targets. So the building inspector and development officer speak to the details.
No changes from the first year, second. It's just to add the traffic impact study and change the accessory building requirements in commercial zones.
Thank you, Vanessa. Any questions or discussion on the item? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 10C, PR-001 ATV bylaw, first reading. I'll do the motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the first reading of the amended bylaw number PR-001 respecting roads accessible to off-road vehicles. first reading by title, bylaw number PR-001, respecting roads accessible to off-road vehicles. Do I have a mover? Councillor Bellman, thank you, and a seconder, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. John, can you speak to the item, please?
Yes, Your Worship, before I turn it over to the rec director, just want to say that the efforts that he's undertaken are a way of trying to find a way to yes for both the community and for the user groups. I'll turn it over to the recreation director.
Thank you. Your Worship, after listening to the presentation by the club president and some of the questions coming from council during that presentation, we've tried to find that balance that was just spoken about between providing additional access after 2 years of the initial approval of the roads accessible for off-road vehicles. Looking at one particular business that has been left out, we've tried to find a way to allow them to access from their trail system off of exit 80 down to Westfield Eatery. They've obviously asked for more significant access to Route 177 to try and go from north to south, exit 80 to Fernley's Boulevard. We don't feel that's the right approach right now, but we can look at phasing that in if we continue to see success by allowing this next phase of access. We did make contact with both the RCMP and Public Safety to ask them what their opinion was on providing additional access and what they'd experienced since we did approve that bylaw about 20 months ago. We obviously did see an increase in enforcement, which we did expect. Public Safety would have never been in our community enforcing off-road vehicle access, so seeing an increase was expected. Certainly both groups do express concerns with some bad actors related to ATV access, but we also did see some of that happening prior to the bylaw improvement as well. And so at this stage, we would still like to support the ATV club in trying to find different corridors and being a part of the greater sort of New Brunswick system that's being spoken about, trying to have a 360 access to the whole province and having Bay-Westfield being part of that access. So that's why we are recommending a second phase to this, and we'll determine if a third phase exists if we get approval.
Okay, thank you, Rick. I'll open the floor to questions from council. Deputy Mayor Toole.
Thank you, Worship. And I want to thank Councillor Malcolm for bringing up the agenda discussion, because there was a discussion last time about us wanting to hear from the RCMP and Public Safety and ask more questions before going forward with this again. I do appreciate there are some changes to it, but I kind of had the same comments when the ATV group came here, that it's the most common complaint that I receive as a councillor, and the most common discussion around town is the ATV use on the roads, and it's gotten way worse in the last couple of years. And I know the RCMP has indicated that they have seen an uptick in the last couple of years of enforcement problems. There's problems with bikes running, Public Safety's had problems with them. I get how they want to have access to trails, and I get that there's good actors and bad actors, but I really think that, you know, we opened up some of the roads and we've seen a lot of problems, and if anything, problems have increased rather than decreased. And what I would really like to see is perhaps a message for us from the ATV groups that we want to support the good actors, we want to support those who are following the rules, but maybe they need to start communicating to the ATVers, to those who do that look, they can't get these privileges if this keeps being abused. So what I would like to see is keeping it as is right now. We're not going to take anything away, but I really have a difficult time thinking of expanding this when we've seen a lot of misuse and people who are not following the rules. And maybe it's great for the ATV community to be able to communicate with people saying, look, if we want these privileges, we're going to act better. Like maybe the peer pressure will be better than the enforcement from external. And so I guess there's two things. One, we really haven't heard from the ATV and from RCMP and Public Safety, and I really would like to hear that other side first and speak to them and really have an idea of what type of enforcement's going on to fix the problems now before we expand the problems that we have in one part of town to another part of the town. So I'm not happy with going forward with this.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Bellman?
Well, reading the report, I find there was problems up at Woolstock Drive and Highland Road. So we open up more roads, we'll have more problems down the road. I own a bike myself, and I don't think they're off-road vehicles, they should be on-road vehicles. So you open the roads up to 177 to the bike club, they'll have access to your Bunge's Point, and they'll have, how can the RCMP or the public safety police certain areas, they're gonna go all the way through town. They're going through town right now, they're coming out of our houses, hop on their bike, they're using it as will now, so I grew up a new can of worms, we let them go all through our town. So I just, it's a bad idea.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other, Councillor Balcom and then Councillor McIntosh Lawrence.
Thank you, Your Worship. I share the concerns of Deputy Mayor Toole and Councillor Bailman's. The Route 177 by where I live in the Westfield part, every weekend there are ATVs driving, sometimes in groups of 10 or 12 at all hours of the day, or all hours of the night, I should say. I have no idea if any of those are have license plates, if they are trail, members of the trail and the local trail clubs. But if we open up more of that road, then it's going to give a green light to the 3 or 4 or 5 or small percentage that are currently driving up and down, not respecting noise, not respecting safety. So there was one a couple of 2 weekends ago, didn't even have lights on. I couldn't believe it. If we do that, we will never get the tranquility of our town back. We have all worked very hard, this council and staff, over the last 5 years to make the town of Grand Bay-Westfield a place to move to and to build homes and apartment buildings and to live in. We will lose that tranquility if we have ATVs that are in subdivisions in a garage. They will drive to the local garage on the road. They're off-road vehicles for a reason. They're meant to be off-road. They're not designed safety-wise, sound-wise, protection-wise to drive on the same road systems that $80,000, $90,000 vehicles are. So I do not support this at all, let alone a potential phase 3. I can recall when the first request came, I do not recall any planned phase 2 or phase 3 for the bigger picture. So, and I also, to be quite frank, I do not believe many of the economic projections and some of the statements that were made by the presenter 2 weeks ago. I just cannot support some of the economic benefits that are stated that have occurred.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McIntosh Lawrence.
So I agree to some extent, and I understand the concerns, and I am not a huge fan of ATVs, even though 2 of my children have them. But I am in favor of this bylaw. To me, this bylaw is for the law-abiding individuals that are using trails, families on weekends. They're using trails and they need access to the town for the food, gas, washrooms. There will always be those individuals who don't follow the rules. That will be so with or without this bylaw. And as Rick said, there will be a trail system for ATVs that connects the whole province, and I would hate for Grand Bay-Westfield businesses to miss out on this revenue because they don't have access to our town. This council has proven to be forward-thinking, planning for the future, and trying to find a way to yes. With Colonel Nace developing at the rate it is, I feel now is the time to address this issue. ATVs are not going anywhere in this part of the province. We live in a rural town. They're here to stay. I think enforcement by RCMP, education by us, as well as the ATV club, and maybe a few edits to the bylaw can go hand in hand in making this bylaw a success.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Murphy and then Councillor Bellman.
I have to agree with Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. I do understand a lot of the concerns. I think that the concerns on Woodstock Drive will be there, whether this bylaw goes through or not. The only thing that I'm not sure if I support is a 24-hour access to the road when the primary business that we're supporting only operates certain hours. Do you really need it to run 24 hours when when the reason for it is to support those businesses and potentially the market at Frontage Point. So maybe it's only operational when the business is open. That would be my comment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bellman?
So do we have any facts on Cass and Kettle, for example, up to Hyder line up on Westfield Road? Do we compare those stats? How many people they get to frequent to their restaurant? And what's the difference in the Westfield eatery? So they don't support that business. Why would they support the eatery up in Westfield?
So, Councillor, are you asking for staff to
Yeah, to check,
gather more data
on
with
that, 'cause
respect to the
if
business?
you're gonna
and
open up the road system to all these ATVs, when we have a short, like I said, we have bikes, we're trying to have bike lanes, having kids walking, never have bikes going up and down both sides of roads. It's a little more too confusing to have all this here, unless we have 5 different lanes for all these different systems, right? I think it's just a different idea.
My question was like, you had
Well, I'd
some
like to-
question,
I'd like to
would you
find
like,
out-
do you need, are you asking for that data? Do we have that data, John, do you know?
Yes.
We wouldn't have that data. I don't know that Cass and Kettle would have that data. As indicated in the Recreation Director's report, he talked to people and the information was anecdotal, but I don't know if he has anything to add to that.
The only thing I would say from a Cass and Kettle standpoint is that they're the leaseholder at the golf club. The golf club does not want ATVs.
So if they don't want them, why should we, why the town, people in the town need to have bikes running up down the roads? I think that we have, this is getting a little.
Sorry, Your Worship, the solution that the Recreation Director came up with does not extend down to the golf course. It stops at the Westfield Eatery.
So it seems like they're being cut off everywhere lately. Heel
Sorry?
pit, they've been cut off, the ATV's been cut off a lot lately, so must be a reason why they're cut off. They cut off the heel pit, going through the pit, so there must be a reason why they're getting cut off. It just doesn't make sense. Why are they getting cut off? All these access to the road or to these stores or something's wrong. You mean, you just saw the heel stopped, and Mr. Burke said they're not going through Keel's pit now. So must be a reason why they're not getting access to the roads or to these businesses. People are shutting them down for some reason.
So what I'm hearing from council is that I think the intent of this bylaw is essentially that to grow legitimate trail linked economic activity like, fuel, food, events, that was the intent of the bylaw for the legitimate users. I'm not hearing any sort of opposition to legitimate users. I'm hearing opposition to the non-responsible users. So to me that it's an enforcement issue. So I think that's the crux of the issue here, is there's an enforcement issue with the ORVs. Because we do have a small number of bad actors that are causing problems around the town. So I'm not sure how we balance that other than by advocating for a new strategy for enforcement from both JPS and the RCMP. But that's what I'm hearing, is that we don't have an issue with the legitimate users. We have an issue with the ones that are being irresponsible. Deputy Mayor?
I think that's not quite true, because I have heard issues with people don't like the ATVs on the roads. They understand allowing them to get the legitimate users to get to the gas station to get back, but allowing a little bit of access on the road even for legitimate users, that kind of makes the illegitimate users or others expand. But I think we're running a different thing here. We're talking about allowing a whole other access to town to off-road vehicles going on road to specifically get to one restaurant where there is potential trail access to that restaurant. It just seems that like the small benefit to the harm, and if we look at it too, what we were just looking at earlier is our active transportation plan, trying to encourage people to walk on the road, trying to encourage people to bike on the road. If you've ever biked on roads that are used by ATVs, you can't with a road bike because there's so much dirt on it pops your tires. So it's not if we want our roads to be good for pedestrians, to be good for bicycles, and we want our trails to be good for hikers and for ATVs, like they're off-road vehicles. I can't remember who it was that made that comment. They're off-road. so keep them off-road, but I do support the legitimate get gas, get out, but really expanding the road for a segment of the population, whether they're legitimate users or not, who people don't want to have zipping up and down the roads all the time. Whether we want to admit it or not, the enforcement problems are going to expand because there's going to be questions if they're, what time are they allowed to be on, when are they not allowed to be on, and people are going to take more liberties if they don't think they're going to get pulled over. So I really don't think it's just, like, with respect, just an issue with the illegitimate users, it's an issue with allowing off-road vehicles access to our roads in general. And I really think if we put our foot down as a council and say, look, we know there are some great users, we've given you some leeway here, we're not willing to expand it unless something is different. And so the people using trails want more access, maybe they need to be the ones, if enforcement's not working through the RCMP, maybe they need to be the ones to say something to people when they're running up and down the roads, to say something to the kids who are doing wheelies in front of the urine at 3 o'clock in the morning. Maybe that needs to be done, but I don't think it's just the illegitimate users, I think it's the fact that a lot of us do have major issues with allowing off-road vehicles on the roads.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor McIntosh Lawrence, then Councillor Rollins.
Is there any way we can reach out to other municipalities that have had success with this? I know it happens in other parts of the province, in rural areas. We're a rural area, there's gonna be there's gonna be ATVs on the road. And I, like Vacation Pizza, I know they have shared trails, in Woodstock had a program like this.
I'm certain that that staff can reach out if they haven't already. I don't know if Rick has done some of that already. Rick, are you able to speak to that?
Prior to the first bylaw, we were in touch with Sussex, was one that had done the phase 1 and then expanded their main street access to include nearly all businesses. They certainly had some negative experience to that expansion. It's never all positive when you make contact with these communities. But ultimately they did expand to try and provide that access. Latouche is the most extreme version of it. We did speak to them where they have a corridor of access to all their businesses, but the bylaws basically says get to that corridor as fast as you can from your home. That's a more extreme version of it. And then you had communities that shut it down entirely for some reasons that council has expressed concerns for. So we did speak to a couple of them. I certainly could expand that search if that's what's required.
Thank you. Councillor Bellman?
So have you done like a survey on the residents of our town, say, do we want bikes run through our town? Have we done that yet? So when you pass a bylaw, it's too late to reverse it after we're done. I think the noise and the bad actors are outweighing the good of the whole bike system. I think the bike club or e-clubs should ask residents or people who have land to get access to these spots. Maybe they should go and sell themselves to the public, saying we want to go to your property to get these access to these locations, because it should be on the town to make roads open to them. It should be the community itself saying, you go through our property to get to these places and abide by some rules and regulations, whatever you need to do to keep people happy. Right now, they're just going up and down the road and they don't care. They're going out their houses, hopping the bike, going 5 kilometers up the road to a trail system. They're not putting the back of the bike on the trailer anymore. They're not doing. They can buy gas in the store. They have jerry cans. They have lunch boxes to go to put your lunches in and go for a trail. It feels like they're doing a road run now. It's not a ATV run no more in the woods. It's on the road now. So I don't know how to explain it anymore. I think it's just a bad idea.
Thank you, Councillor. Just a point of clarification. Through the bylaw process, there is a public input process, so, and that's publicized, so any sort of bylaw that goes through the public is asked to provide their input. But yes, thank you for that. Okay, so any other questions or comments? I know when we were discussing the agenda, the idea was to have this discussion, possibly, depending on the will of council, pass the first reading and then have JPS and RCMP come in to present on their views of the situation. But that is at the will of council. So at this point, I will call the question. All in favor? 1, 2. Contrary minded? Motion is defeated. Thank you, council, for the discussion on that. And thank you, staff, for the work that you've done.
So just for clarification, we won't bring in our CMP JPS to talk about this, we'll hold this out to the next council if that's what the ATV club requests.
And, and I would suggest, based on the discussion here today, that there be some expectations for responsible users and the ATV club, things like a club stewardship role, adopting a formal code of conduct, promoting it to members, participating in peer enforcement, all of those kinds of things, just
So,
to
Your
move it
Worship,
forward.
yeah, some of the keynotes, and I'll defer to the Recreation Director as well. Need definite education campaign, need self-policing, which you referenced. Is a curfew feasible for motorized vehicles? That's something that I don't know if that's something that we can do. The RCMP need to come up in JPS with something resembling an enforcement strategy besides what they currently have. And I think perhaps what we communicate to the ATV club president is that really it's a privilege to be able to use the roadways. However, until the behavior of the whole group improves, councils find it very challenging to support their request.
Yeah, it's that will help council show that the responsible riders are partners in solving the problems, not just beneficiaries of improved access. And we also need to engage in advocacy for stronger enforcement. We can't change the no pursuit policy, but we can advocate for a smarter enforcement strategy. And I'm not sure what that looks like, but I think that it's appropriate that we expect that JPS and the RCMP realize that this is something they have to do more with. So with that, we'll move on to 11A, Heel Excavation Permit Application 2026. John, I'm gonna get you to speak to this before I read out this big long motion.
Sure, I'm gonna turn it over to our building inspector and development officer. This is a annual process for council and Keel, and this just allows them to be able to make and take appropriate sized rocks and transport it to different parts in the region for different types of development. I'll turn it over to our building inspector and development officer.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. We received the application from Keel Construction for their excavation permit for 2026. It was accompanied with the required security. In approving this, there's also some scheduled measures like street sweeping and some dust control measures. We also have a provision in there to request additional dust control measures. And also they can't undertake any blasting without prior approval from council.
Thank you, Danessa. I'll read out the motion, get a mover and seconder, and then open the floor to questions. Keel Excavation Permit Application 2026. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Bay-Westfield accept the July 2018 Digital Plan Ultimate Rehabilitation of Valentine Pit for excavation of lands identified by pits number 00093088, 00227546, 00227595, 30042899, and accept the Intact Insurance Company Indemnity Bond number 9040500079, Legacy Bond number HM 0003001013, along with endorsement dated October 20th, 2025, reflecting the security amount of $130,000. Effective from 31st December 2025 and ending 31st December 2026, with additional operational requirements for the 2026 excavation permit. To provide street sweeping on Valentine Place once per week during the months of June through October, and provide the town with written records of the dust control measures undertaken each month. To provide additional dust control measures as may be requested by the building inspector, subject to special and/or unreasonable dust conditions, and not to undertake any blasting without prior approval of the town council. And do I have a mover for that? Councillor Belvins, thank you. Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Day.
we had a large bang in the community last week. Was that a blasting up at or at the pit?
Jeff?
Councillor, yes, it was. All the processes were followed as approved. This morning, we received the blasting report. The closest property, the threshold, the municipal threshold, which is lower than the provincial threshold, was exceeded by about 1%. However, it was at, or I don't remember the provincial one, but it was at or below the provincial standard, so they didn't violate that. But that was the property approximately closest to it. And does seem to be general consensus that it was perhaps the loudest one in a few years. But all the processes were followed, and the blasting report came back that they were in within all thresholds that they're supposed to be within.
The time we received a lot of complaints about blasting up in that area, it had been a cloudy day.
We'll see.
And as a result, now I'm not an engineer, but the blast, instead of going up, went out to the sides, and as a result, it was felt in the community more than what it would have normally been felt if it had been a sunny day.
Yeah, totally agree, Councillor. I don't understand why they went ahead with those types of conditions, because I think that was one of the conscious decisions a number of years ago that they would try to do that. But I think they had 4 proposed dates, and I think this is the last one. So I think in order for them to do it, because they postponed the other dates, and it was either do it or you have to come back to council and do it again, or reapply for 2026. Sorry, I got years there. 26.
Because of the community being well aware of that blast that we had where the cloud cover was pretty bad. In future, as we move ahead, I would hope that you would really look at that with them, because the cloud cover causes huge ramifications in the community.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Bellin?
I do remember the last time she mentioned that it was a cloud cover, so one of the stipulations was higher ceiling level. And that's
Yeah.
one of the, and then the next year, I was there, I did it myself, it was like the train went by, so just this higher ceiling level, and he said maybe had 4 attempts, and this one maybe was within the guidelines, so.
Thank you, Councillor. There's no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thanks, Council. 11B, Town Fees 2026. I will read out the motion and then get staff to speak on this. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield adopt the various 2026 town fees effective January 1st, 2026 as attached to this report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Berkey, thanks. A seconder, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. John, can you speak to the item, please?
Yes, Your Worship, before I turn it over to our CFO, I just want to draw to Council's attention that we're moving ball fields out of this area and putting it into facilities. And you'll be discussing that a little bit later, but I'll turn it over to our CFO now.
Thank you. Yes, Your Worship and Council, this is something that we do every year. We review it before the following year, and we make sure that we update our documents and residents are aware of the fees that we charge for certain items. There are no material changes to our fees for 2026. We've tidied up the document a little bit, removed a couple of items, such as the search and preparation for public documents is listed at $0. By legislation, we're not allowed to charge for such requests, so we just feel it's appropriate to remove that from the document. And then there are a number of books that are listed there. No one has any recollection of the last time we wished to purchase those books. We still do have some of them, but we'll just tidy the document up here and just remove that item, and then all fields have moved. So
Any questions or comments on the motion?
A question about the fees. Does it cover the maintenance of the ball field, the fees we charge?
That's that's
What's
the
in
next
the-
item,
Oh,
Paul, yeah.
sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Any other questions? There being none, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thanks. 11C ball field fees, 2026. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield accept the new ball field fee structure as presented, and that's youth fee, $15 per game, practice, 2 hours, adult fee, $45 per game, or practice for 2 hours, senior old-timers fee, $30 per game, or practice 2 hours. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Bailmans, and second, Councillor Burby, too many B's on the council. John, can you speak to the item, please?
Before I turn it over to the Recreation Director, Your Worship, just want to commend the Recreation Director for introducing current best practices and how we look at fees and for reviewing them, and for the good partnership that we have with one of the leagues. That partnership does result in less revenue, but I think it gains a valuable service for the facility. So I'll turn it over to the Recreation Director.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. In the report, we speak to the fact that our fee structure is significantly different than what you would see sort of within the industry practice of trying to standardize either an hourly or per game practice rate. Our fees had been locked for at least 15 years based on all the documentation that I could find. And it was a confusing calculation for me this year, despite sort of having been trained on what it was. And I came to a significantly different number than the previous administration. So in having done that once, I thought that we should research what's happening within our greater St. John area. I looked at the city in both Quispamsis, Hampton, Rossay, what they're doing with ball fields. And so that is reflected in the changes that I'm proposing. Also within that, we are going to look at a slight increase in revenue collection. But by going to the per game or practice structure, we are close to in line with all the communities. I would say Rossay is slightly below our youth rate. We would be the second lowest. We would be still the lowest adult rate, but it is a significant increase over what they've been paying until today. And then the senior old-timers fee would be a unique fee. Most senior groups would just be recognized as an adult fee. The reason we're asking for the $30 per game rate for that group is, as John mentioned, they've done significant work with the community related to the lights. Councillor Day may remember some of how that got put up in the community, and probably has been requested multiple times as they look for funding. But this year, they increased that assistance to us. They did that by using members of their league to volunteer time and equipment, and they saved the town approximately $4,000 on light installation. So the town is still buying the lights, but we absorb zero installation fees. They're just lucky that they have members that have all the expertise and certifications to be able to do those installations. So going to the question that Councillor Bailmans asked, and I believe another councillor had expressed interest in that same question, Councillor Bailmans, around the fee recovery. Our approximate expenses to maintain our 3 ball fields is about $25,000. Typically we had run closer to $30,000 to maintain those fees until the savings that I just mentioned. And we would only have been collecting approximately $2,500 until this year. This year we collected around $3,000. With the changes that I'm proposing, if the usage remains the same, we would collect around $4,000. I will say that having spoken to recreation directors around the area, fee recovery on ball fields rarely exceeds 20%, and the majority are under 10%.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for staff on the item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. 11D, storage utility reserve transfer. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize the following transfer. Number 1, transfer $40,000 from the sewerage utility fund to the sewerage utility capital reserve. 2, transfer $7,500 from the Sewerage Utility Fund to the Sewerage Utility Operating Reserve Fund. Do I have a mover? Councillor Bellman, second by Deputy Mayor Toole. And John?
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. One of the big values that Council established in 22 and 23 was resiliency, and the undertakings by the CFO, we'll speak to this more, is to address that issue.
Thank you, yes, Your Worship and Council. As part of our 2025 sewage budget, we had allowed for reserve transfers of $65,000. If you recall from the quarterly reports, we've brought forward, it's been a tough year financially for the utility. There's been a number of repairs and replacement parts required that have stretched that budget very thin. If we were to make a $65,000 reserve transfer, we would push that fund into a deficit position. So we are recommending that we reduce the reserve transfers down to a total of $47,500, split across the capital reserve and the operating reserve. And that will give us it boosts the balances of those reserve accounts. It's not where we want to be. We did set a goal a number of years ago to get the balances up towards $1 million. There is a plan to do that over the coming years. This will be this one step.
Thank you, James. Do you have any questions for the CA or the CFO on the item? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. 11E, general revenue transfers. The motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize the following transfers. 1, $45,000 transfer from the General Revenue Fund to the General Revenue Operating Reserve Fund. 2, $985,000 transfer from the General Revenue Fund to the General Revenue Capital Reserve Fund. 3, $350,000 transfer from the General Revenue Capital Reserve Fund to the General Revenue Fund. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Do we have a second? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. John?
Sorry, Your Worship. I'm going to let our CFO speak to this, but again, it talks about fiscal prudence and how do we ensure the robustness of our operations.
Thank you. Yes, again, Your Worship and Council. This is a little bit more involved than the last one. I'll just walk you through the money transfers. So the transfer to the operating reserves relates to unspent money that's been allocated for regional capital projects for the regional infrastructure. It's managed by the FRSC. There's $45,000 there that will not be spent this year, so we put that into reserves, and as they bring forward future requests, we can pay for those projects from our reserves. $985,000 transfer, which is a big number, into our capital reserves, is comprised of a few components. The first part is there was a budgeted allocation of $470,000, and as part of that building resiliency ethos that we've been talking about, we had allocated money towards future capital projects, plus just boosting our reserves in general. There was also a number of projects that were not completed, capital projects not completed in 2025, such as the 3-road crosswalk, the recreation hub, and there's still some work to do with implementing the accounting ERP system. So this is unspent money that was allocated. We put that into reserves. As those projects get completed, in the future we can tap into those funds. And then, just due to the general financial position that we're projecting for the general fund for the year, we have recommended an additional $200,000 be allocated into capital that can be utilised in future years. We're also requesting some money to come out of capital reserves because there were some projects that did get completed, that we had allocated money from reserves for. And there's a list of the projects there. So that comprised $350,000. If there's any further questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, James. Do you have any questions for the CFO on the item? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded? That motion is carried, thank you. 11F, debenture request fire department tanker 2027. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield submit to the municipal capital borrowing board an application of authorization to borrow for a capital expense for the following term and amount. Purpose, protective services tanker truck, amount $800,000, term 15 years. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Toole, second Councillor Burpee, and John, can you speak to the item, please?
Yes, before I turn it over to the CFO, the good news is this piece of apparatus is less than $1 million. The bad news is that delivery is 16 to 18 months, something like that. So even though we're starting the process for it now, we don't expect to take delivery until 2027. And we needed 2027 to ensure that we sustain that accreditation that the chief was very proud of that we achieved recently. So I'll turn it over to our CFO for further explanation.
Thank you. I'll give you a brief outline, with the council on the process, and then we're just going to ask the chief to say a few words about the piece of equipment that we're purchasing. So, as the CAO said, it may take 18 months from the time of placing a purchase order until we take delivery. So we have to request our authorization to borrow before we can place a tender document out in the public domain. So we're just requesting authorization to apply for a debenture loan, and then if that is approved by the province, then we move forward with the tendering, and then after the tendering process, then we come back to council to seek authorization to actually enter the contract. So that's what the request is. I asked the deputy chief to just talk a little bit about the piece of equipment that we're purchasing.
Certainly, this is a replacement for our oldest and most undersized apparatus currently in distribution. And by the time this is approved and received, that truck will be 20 years old and this has been.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any questions for staff on the item? Councillor Burpee.
What happens to tanker number 2 now? Does it get sold? Does it get repurposed? Is there any use for it at all?
Typically, it goes off to auction. I believe the new works director has indicated an interest in it. So we'll have to wait and see, but typically, like all pieces of equipment, we try to extract as much value from it as possible. It's just not been determined now, because we're just made aware of the works director possible desire to be able to use it.
Thank you. Any other questions? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Now we'll move on to 11I, Council Calendar 2026. And the motion is that the Council of the Town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the calendar as presented. And do we have a mover? Councillor Burpee, do we have a second? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence, and John, can you speak to the item?
Certainly. So this is an annual practice that we do, council, to establish meetings. Even though we schedule meetings twice a month, we've been very mindful, I think, for about 2+ years now, that if we can minimize the number of meetings, we do it. And I think we've been reasonably successful in doing it, except for the budget season, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. However, a couple of things that I really want to draw your attention to for next year. The June 12, 13, 14 council orientation, onboarding, and strategic planning. So we've already booked the room at Envision St. John. We'll be one of the last users in that room because they're changing locations. And then the other one, which we have to put in italics, and I'm not going to throw the recreation director under the bus or anything, but we have to hold this one loosely. This is the one where we want to do a town tour. What do lift stations look like? What does the lagoon look like? What does the inside the lagoon building look like? And all these other fun things. And then, of course, the recreation programmer's tour of his interesting assets. But just because of that time of year, how busy people may be, we're going to hold that one loosely, but we feel it's important that there be a placeholder at the very least for that. So if you're coming back on council, please keep that in mind, and if people are thinking of running for council, keep the 12th, 13th, and 14th tightly in your grip.
Thank you, John, and the new council will have the benefit of not doing it in an ice storm, snowstorm, etc. like this council.
Is that a problem?
Okay, any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion is carried. Item 12, bills for payment. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize the December 8th, 2025 bills for payment as presented in the amount of $573,142.58. Do I have a mover? Councilor Burpee, thank you. Second. Deputy Mayor Toole, any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Item 13, consent agenda. 13A, animal control report, November 2025. 13B, building report, November 2025. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the consent agenda items for December 8th, 2025. Do I have a mover? Councilor McIntosh Lawrence, second.
Second.
Thank you. Councilor Malcolm. John, did you have?
Once you finish this, I need to say something. Sorry.
Sure. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. John?
I was very politely reminded, Your Worship, that during the calendar thing, I was supposed to remind council that Christmas Eve on the 24th will be closing at lunchtime. So just a reminder that we started doing that with council approval. I believe it was last year, if I recall correctly. So I was supposed to do that during the calendar event. So.
Okay. Excellent.
So what, I'm sorry, I missed part of that in my hearing.
We're closing at lunch on Christmas Eve.
Oh, that's nice.
All right. So then we'll move on to item 14, council reports. We'll start with Councilor Malcolm.
Nothing to report, Your Worship.
Okay. Councilor McIntosh Lawrence.
November 25th, one of my favorite days, I was fortunate enough to serve lunch to one of the schools in the area at the Church of the Resurrection. November 29th, I was involved with the parade in town, which was lovely. December 4th, I attended the Stick to Inclusion presentation at Marco Polo in town. December 5th, I attended Uptown Sparkles, and December 6th was our tree lighting, and it could have been any more perfect with the snow. I heard numerous people say it was like a Hallmark movie. So my time on council is complete.
Thank you. Councilor Day.
We've been having Fiberfest, and this coming Thursday is our last get-together before Christmas from 6:30 to 8:30 in the River Valley Room upstairs. And we do not get back together until January the 8th. So.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Bellance.
I attended a Brokers meeting the last Wednesday of November, and yesterday I attended 2 basketball games at the River and we won both games. So everybody did. That's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. Councilor Burpee.
Thank you, Your Worship. November 29th, I attended the Grand Bay-Westfield's 3rd parade, I think. So it was a bigger turnout, I think, than it was before, so it was a lot of fun. On the 30th, I attended the Westfield District Recreation Association's gingerbread making event. We had over 25 families register for that, so it was a huge turnout. There was pictures with Santa and snacks and prizes and cookie decorating. It was lots of fun. Then on December the 6th, I also attended the Mayor's Tree Lighting Hallmark movie. It was snowing. a lot of people, a good turnout. Thank you to the members of Youth Council that also helped out at that event. It was the Harborview Choir was amazing. It was so much fun, and that's it for me.
Thank you, Councilor. Deputy Mayor Toole.
So I missed all the fun Christmas things on the weekends, but I did get to do a few fun things. I got to represent the town on the November 28th at the breakfast with the Premier put on by the Chamber of Commerce in the city, and it was great. A lot of talk about priorities for the region, the St. John region, and a lot of hype about the good stuff we're already doing around here. So that was really nice. And another highlight, which is the second year I got to go to this with the Council Lawrence, was the Inclusion New Brunswick lunch. They do a Christmas lunch and fundraising lunch for the region, and it's amazing. Like everybody should go. It's just a wonderful, wonderful event. And I think before last year, I really didn't have any appreciation for the impact Inclusion New Brunswick has on the entire province, and it's just amazing. It's direct impact on people in our communities, and it's a wonderful organization. So that was a great experience.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll start off with thanking the Church of the Resurrection for every year they put on these amazing lunches for two of our local schools, Inglewood School and Grand Bay Primary, and they do one Tuesday and one the next Tuesday. And so their volunteers, I mean the church funds it, and then their volunteers make this enormous lunch for over 100 kids each time. So it's really, really an incredible event, and they're such a giving community, and I feel very privileged that they asked me to come and serve lunch to the kids every year. So one week I did it at Inglewood, one day I did it for Grand Bay Primary. So that was really the highlight of my month there. That was really, really great. I think some of the more significant meetings that I've been to are the Fundy Regional Service Commission monthly meeting, and also I chair the Fundy Regional Service Commission Regional Transportation Committee, and the big work that's going to be going on with that committee over the next 12 months, assuming we get RDC funding, which we're hoping we'll hear about hopefully before the end of the year, is a regional transportation plan and pilot. So that if we manage to get that funding and start that work, that could be very huge for the region and for Grand Bay-Westfield, particularly as we're doing some of our own internal work with respect to public transportation. I chaired the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick board meeting this past weekend, which always fun to connect with my colleagues and do that work, but it wasn't nearly as much fun as what I got to do later that Saturday, which was go to the Mayor's tree lighting, which is easily my favorite event of the whole year. So thank you to staff and the Community Vitality Committee and the Youth Council and everybody who comes together to pull that event off. It really, really, really is wonderful. So with that, we'll move on to business arising from Committee of the Whole, and then we'll move on, there being none, we'll move on to 16, which is adjournment. And do I have a mover? Councillor Murphy, thank you. And do I have a second? Deputy Mayor Toole. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Your motion is carried. Thank you.